we also homeschooled. And our homeschooling experience was a little bit different. I had my kids, and I came into schooling from a very educational perspective. My original career was and still is partly, as a speech and language pathologist. So I thought, wow, I'm having kids, this is so amazing. I can fill their heads with loads of information and make them brilliant. So I thought that it was up to me, that I was responsible for their educational knowledge. And so when I first found out about homeschooling, I was part of an attachment parenting group. And I went to the attachment parenting group because I love the idea of long-time nursing and skin-to-skin contact. And all of these things, I was with my kids the first years of their life. And then all of a sudden, I had to separate from my children to place them in school. And I had thought I was supposed to do that. So I sent them to preschool. I sent them to kindergarten. My daughter, Gabriella, who some of you may know, she went up to 3rd grade. And I missed them terribly, and I was always volunteering in the school. This is my son, Marco. And when he was in kindergarten, he was like bored out of his mind. And they were sitting in circle time, and he tried to get out of the circle. And the teacher talked with me, and she told me that I should reprimand him about not getting out of the circle. And it was very, very difficult for me because he would go to school crying, and I would be really upset going to my job. And then one day I was volunteering in the library, and he wanted to come out of a line that was a single file line on the way to the gym, and he wanted to give me a hug. And the teacher got really mad at him and made him stay in the line, even though he was crying. And I felt at that moment that school was breaking his spirit. And even though my daughter, Gabriella, seemed perfectly fine in 3rd grade, she was very compliant. She was part of the gifted program, which was twice a week, 20 minutes logic puzzles. I did way more than that when they came home, homeschooling. And I just found that she was sitting most of the day when I passed the room, and she was listening to lectures from the teacher. And there was a lot of management issues in the room. And we were already going to this attachment parenting group, and most of the mothers in the attachment parenting group were planning to homeschool their children, and some of them already were. And that's when I started reading books about it. And I got very excited about this wonderful option that was exposed to me. So the first part was that I did feel that it was an extension of attachment parenting. And I did not want to just stop being present for my children during most of the day. I also found, in addition to that early separation, that when my children were in school, that they were being dumbed down, that they were not given the opportunity for creativity and imagination. They had no ability to make their own decisions. And once we started homeschooling, I took them everywhere. They were a complete part of our lives. I got a traffic ticket, and I took them to court with me. We took them on my husband is multilingual and from other countries, so it was an opportunity to go traveling. There were just so many things just in life that we did. I took them everywhere with me. And so I found that the school environment could be intimidating and coercive. There were also a lot of conflicting messages. One of those messages was a food message. They went to health classes where they learned about the food pyramid at school, and they came home with that information, and I told them it wasn't true. And they were learning a very different way of being. When they were ages 3 and 5, we had already transitioned to a raw vegan lifestyle. So we were eating differently, and at school there was junk food used as rewards. On Fridays, pizza was given as a reward. Candy was often given as a gift for completing a test. And then switching subjects by the bell. My daughter Gabriella loved to write. She was an excellent creative writer. And when I got together with her third grade teacher, the third grade teacher said, Gabriella is an excellent writer, but she doesn't want to change when the bell rings to math. And we have to work on that. And that's when I started thinking, but it's wonderful to write. She's like writing like poetry and even entire books. So what happened when she came out of school was that I started a creative writing club. And we had kids in that creative writing club for like 6 or 7 years. That writing club went on. And children of all ages came to me from New Jersey and New York. Also the natural rhythms. My children could sleep as late as they wanted to sleep. They could eat when they were hungry and not told when to eat. They could go to the bathroom without a pass. And we got to grow up together. And I feel like both my kids are very close because of that family togetherness. We also had a lot of time out in nature. We went on loads of hikes and loads of homeschool field trips that my kids absolutely loved. And we did studies based on what they were interested. The first few years, I was feeling very responsible for their education, and I got curriculums, and I felt like I needed to sit them down at the table every Tuesday and Thursday and make sure they got their education. But what I learned was they were upset about that, and as the time went on, I went more and more to what Ellen was talking about, this unschooling, which is letting your children follow their own interests. Marco was interested in trains from a very young age, and sometimes we would just hang out at the train station. And we would go on trains, and we would go to places where he could see how electrical train model engineers would work with trains. And we did all kinds of things. The reading was around trains, the history of trains. So you could take your child's interest and do every single subject. By the time that they got up to the age where they did want to go to college, we did a portfolio about everything that they had done all of their years growing up. And those portfolios wowed college administration people, and both my kids got great scholarships without going back to school. So they went to school early on, and they did not choose to go to school later because they already had that early experience. Another aspect that I loved, and still love this today because I still feel like it's in both of my children, is learning and being with all ages to learn. When we went to a class, there were 5-year-olds and 20-year-olds. They were all melded together. And I just loved seeing them being able to relate to all ages. There are children today in public schools who can only relate to their peers of their age. They can't relate to other ages. And so I've loved watching that as my kids have grown up. We also looked for teachers who were passionate about their work and learning from each other. So my kids learned from some of the other homeschool children's grandparents. There was a woman who taught them crocheting. We found an astronomer who had built his own planetarium. And we used to go to him every week to work with him and to go out at night and look through his telescopes. So we just found teachers who would be super interesting to our kids. And some people said to me, oh, you must be so isolated. We're so sorry for you. You keep your kids at home all the time. And I said, what, are you kidding me? My kids have homeschool friends and school friends. Marco has always been an athlete and very involved in school sports and recreational town sports. And they were both involved in musical theater. So they met lots of school children that way, in addition to having a homeschool community of about 300 families. So we were out all the time. In fact, my husband called us outschoolers. So we were very, very busy. And then I have to also emphasize, as Ellen did, the benefits of play, how important play is. My son Marco had a friend that he went to his house, and that friend came to us, and they would play for a week. This friend of his had a tree house, and they would live in the tree house for a week. And we didn't stop those play dates. Those play dates were a great period of growth. And then down the road, it also led to great flexibility and independence. When the town sports recommended and Marco had the opportunity to go to high school, he did not want to go to high school because he loved his independence and flexibility. And so I told him it was totally up to him what he wanted to do, and he chose to continue to homeschool. And he might tell you something about what he did decide to do. But for both of them, the later experiences revolved around volunteer work and their independent interests and internships. So their entire high school experience was around their internships, and for Marco it was sports, and he can tell you about some of what he ended up doing in the high school years.
Hello everyone. Well, first let me say, the more and more that I become removed from homeschooling, the more I'm grateful for it being a part of my life. Recently, I was able to meet up with some homeschool friends, some families that I haven't seen in a while, and we were just together reminiscing about all the fun that we used to have. And that's really what I think about when I look back on my time homeschooling, is how much freedom I had. That was the best part about homeschooling, is how much freedom I had to play and to just be with other kids and just have our parents as facilitators, as you both said, but also let us work things out on our own. I can't remember how many times that we thought of an idea about how we really liked the show Survivor, so we were outside and we made up our own Survivor, or we like this or we like that, and we were able to really just, as a group of all different types of ages, able to just mold and create whatever we wanted to do and just make it happen within ourselves. If we needed a parent to come and intervene and help us out in a certain way, of course we would ask, but looking back, it really amazes me how much we were able to do just on our own and how much we were able to create. Something else that really makes me appreciate the way that I was brought up. I mean, whenever I talk about it, I always say that homeschooling is just one of the best things that ever happened to me, because it gave me so much freedom, it gave me so much time to play, and it was such a different upbringing that I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm very different. Obviously, if you're here, or if you're a vegan or a raw vegan, you know how it feels to be a little different. Sometimes it can feel like you're on the outside, but with me, with homeschooling, it made me appreciate it so much, because I feel like I just do things differently. I feel like in school, the curriculum is very set, it's very guided, that a lot of the ways that people are taught, they're told to think a certain way, and it's hard sometimes for them to think outside the box or think differently. So I'll realize that sometimes I'll be with some of my friends that have had more of a traditional upbringing and still look at a problem one way, and I'll kind of focus on one solution, and I'm just thinking of something completely different. I don't know where that comes from, but I'm always cognizant of it, because it just makes me feel like I was just able to mold the way that I think more differently. which is something that's kind of unique and that I've learned to embrace over my time.
What about the history and some of the things that you
Absolutely. So throughout my period of homeschooling, I was always into sports. We would always play sports within our homeschooling group, but I always played in town. I played competitive soccer, and I played a few other competitive sports. And when I had the decision if I wanted to go to high school or not, really the only reason that I was thinking about going to high school, I mean, I loved all my friends that were about to go to high school, but I had such a great social balance between my homeschooling friends and my school friends that didn't entice me too much to go to high school. But what really appealed to me was the athletics, because I was super into athletics and they wouldn't even let me try out for any of the sports teams unless I went to high school. So that's something that I sat down for a little while. I don't think I did it too much, I'll have to tell you the truth. I probably didn't think about it too much because I just loved the amount of freedom I had and the balance I was able to have in my life. Or during high school, I would like meet my friends for lunch and like go down and wherever they were at my friend's house, or if they went out to some place to eat, I'd meet them for lunch and then I'd go back and do my own thing during the day. So the freedom that I had was just too valuable to pass up. I tried to appeal our town's decision if I could play sports with the teams like 3 different times, but they decided that I would have to enroll in high school to do it, so I decided not to. But because of that, I developed a different passion in life when it comes to sports. I became really interested in sports broadcasting, and I found a sports broadcasting camp. That's something else about homeschooling. Is like, you think about it now, if there's something that you're passionate in life and you think about it a lot and you're trying to think of ways to bring it into your life and attract something, you're able to manifest that in life. And homeschooling is a lot of the same, especially when you have people that are a little older and more experienced and know how to facilitate those things in your life. So as the kid, you're just thinking about all these ideas, all these things that you want to bring into reality, and they just keep coming. Like, we liked astronomy, so we found an astrologer, or they were interested in the snake and they just brought the snake back and they were just doing it. So that was something with sports that I was able to bring that into my life. I went to a sports broadcasting camp, which really spurred on a passion in sports broadcasting, and then that's what really made me want to go to school, go to college. So I concentrated a lot on SATs because I know I wanted to go to a bigger school, and my mom made a fantastic portfolio for me with all the things that I
didn't even want him to take the SATs. He insisted.
And that was a bit of an experience too, because in New Jersey you don't really have to take exams every year, where in other states, if you're homeschooling, you need to take yearly exams sometimes. And so the SATs was like my first big test. I was doing some community college courses, but the SATs was my first big test. And I had another homeschool parent who works with children that are about to take the SATs. So I was working with her, and I remember the one thing she was like, "Okay, we're gonna put you at a different high school than the one in your town, because we don't want you to see any of your friends right when you're about to like focus on this one big test." And I remember as soon as I sat down, I just looked to my right and I see like one of my best friends from high school, who their tutor obviously had the same idea. So that got my nerves going a little bit. But I took the SATs. The first time I did so-so, but I was able to take it again and improve on those scores and go to a school that I really had a desire to go to, and I had a really great college experience. And homeschooling really is what you want to make of it. So I think that's the overall key is your kid has his own passions and his own desires in life, and homeschooling is really a way for him to discover those fully. So I'm really grateful that I was able to be part of my life.
Thank you, Marcia. We're gonna have a Q&A in a couple of minutes. I just want to read something that initially was one of the first things I read that stuck with me and made me know that I wanted to homeschool. And it was from somebody anonymous. I do not want to wake up some morning with an ache in my heart, wondering, what happened? My children are gone, all grown, and I didn't even know them. And I just feel like life goes by so quickly. I wanted to have my children around me as much as possible. So that's what I did. And it later led to my children doing all kinds of things that I had no idea that they would take up. It led to Marco doing an internship full-time in high school with Madison Square Garden, and just exploring life now, being able to travel on his own, and just really taking life into your own hands. My daughter was always into environmentalism, and she's working now at Turtle Lake Refuge in Durango, Colorado as the manager there. It's a raw food and wild foraging center. So they both love what they're doing. And the key with homeschooling, and I know that Ellen, that it was her goal right from the beginning also, is that what we want for our children is for them to be happy. And that's really what homeschooling is all about. There's also some other wonderful families here who are homeschooling now. So for those of you who are interested in homeschooling, my friend Diana Evans right there, absolutely amazing homeschool mom. And Sabine is here also somewhere. She's not right here, but she is also homeschooling. And who was the other? There were some other people who said that they were homeschooling. Yes. Right back there from Colorado. Right, what is your name again? Sarah. Sarah. So she's homeschooling as well. So there's plenty of people to talk to and ask questions to. And there's other families who aren't here who are homeschooling or planning to homeschool. So we would like to take your questions. And so think of anything that you might like to ask.
I have two questions. My first question is the SAT the only question or the only test that they have to take, like if they were to want to go to college? Because I'm in California and I don't know what the rules are, but like I always prefer that like your GED or just some kind of test.
Right. It's going to be different in each state. I know that in New Jersey, first of all, homeschooling was very, very liberal and very easy for us. There's no requirements whatsoever, not even quarterly reports. But I did them anyway because I wanted to, because I was so excited about everything that my kids were doing. And the superintendent would write me a letter back each year and tell me how wonderful he thought it was about what we were doing. In fact, he was really on our side when we later wanted Marco to play sports in high school and just go for sports.
And then a couple more things about that. I heard that there was a guy at Stanford that was hired to be a headhunter for unschoolers because they wanted the unschoolers in these big universities because their experience had been that those kids were self-directed and passionate about learning, which is what they really want in a college student. They weren't burned out yet. Yeah, and the other thing is Michigan also has no requirements, so I didn't have to turn anything in. I didn't even have to mention that I was homeschooling. We just didn't show up for school, and that was considered to be fine. But there is an organization called Clon Lara that is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where I'm from, and they will take students internationally and interview your unschooled child when they're at the age where they want to apply for college. And they'll write a high school transcript for you based on, taking the internship and whatever, and writing it up in college admissions language for you. And they'll just talk to the child until they have enough examples that can show what they did, and it works. These kids are getting into all the same schools as the kids who go to school.
I want to just bounce off that one, that there's other schools as well. There's a place that we found in Maine called Royal Academy. And I just signed up for Marco's senior year, and all I had to do was do the 4 quarterly reports on the phone with the director. She took everything that we were doing and put it into a subject. So he was working outside in the woods with this guy who was an environmentalist, and I told her what he was doing, and she put that down as science. Everything that he did, we were able to put into a subject and was graded. And then they sent that in. It looked like a prep school. He got into 8 of his 9 schools with scholarships, with huge scholarship money. And it was, a lot of it was because of that help that we got. So I think it is important to know of these resources.
One more thing too, when you're looking for colleges, when kids in high school are always looking into certain colleges, especially like the Ivy League schools, they're always looking for a way to stand out. And like obviously being a homeschooler, you immediately stand out and your application is put in the other pile. So I think that's a huge advantage.
And then my second question was, like, how challenging was it for you as like parents, like, I guess juggling your jobs and like the actual homeschooling and community?
Well, I mentioned that I needed to get a job because early in my homeschooling days I became single, divorced, and so I created work that my kids could participate in with me. So we had our Sunnyside Learning Center. I worked part-time while they were with their dad as well at night sometimes, but half of my income or more was coming from this business that I created with them. Even my 4-year-old was involved, sweeping the floor and chopping up the snacks, right? And the older kids were actually, guiding the kids and setting up crafts and doing stuff like that. So, I just figured, people told me, the lawyer, my ex-husband, my parents, everybody seemed to be saying to me that I was going to have to go get a job and put the kids in school. And I, like Karen, I just wanted to be with my kids so badly. I'd already been homeschooling. I wasn't about to give it up. I was ready to move mountains to find a way to be with my kids. And so that was my way, create a business that they could help me with.
And I was fortunate that my husband was working, and we were both working. I was a speech pathologist full-time before I had my children, and then I was planning to continue working. I was the head of a speech clinic in Manhattan, and then we moved to New Jersey, and I was planning to still work, but after I had my daughter, I fell in love. And then I had my son, and I fell in love the second time. And that was it. I just knew that it was going to be a priority. And I feel fortunate that I was able to completely take off from working for 6 years. And then what I did, I went back per diem. I didn't go back full time. I went back and took people's places when they were out. So I didn't go full time, and already at that point I had a full homeschool community. So on the days when I did go to work, other homeschool moms took my kids. On the days when they had to do something, I took their kids. So it was just a great, great support to have a thriving homeschool community. And many areas do, and I've heard even these days that homeschooling is really thriving quite well.
What